no yelling, no caterwauling, just grown folk talk about the issues that matter. Join me, Andrew Donaldson, every weekday morning for Heard Tell.
We're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Cleanup is underway after a fast-moving blaze destroyed a Calabash home late Sunday night. Just before 11 o'clock, Calabash firefighters were called to a fire on Wampy Street in the Oceanside Place subdivision. Firefighters found the one-story home fully engulfed in flames. Despite their best efforts, that home was a total loss. The fire was so intense, several nearby homes sustained minor damage as well. Fortunately, the people inside escaped without injury, and the Red Cross is helping them find temporary lodging. The Brunswick County Fire Marshal's Office investigator says the blaze appears to have started accidentally on a back patio and screened-in porch area, but the exact cause remains under investigation. The application period for Phase 2 of the state's Business Recovery Grant Program closes Wednesday. The Department of Revenue's program is looking to help businesses that struggled or had to partially shut down during the pandemic. The grant amount is a percentage of the economic loss demonstrated by the eligible business, or $500,000, whichever is less. A business that was ineligible during Phase 1 because it received other COVID-19 relief may now be eligible for a grant in Phase 2. In Wrightsville Beach, Ocean Rescue reports more than a dozen rescues over the past few days, with the majority being related to rip currents. Ocean Rescue Captain Sam Prophet says the team anticipated the rise in rescues due to the number of visitors. Prophet says the risk of rip currents is low for now, but he advises people to swim near lifeguard stands if possible. Police in Monroe in Union County are investigating a fatal shooting Sunday night. Officers say 25-year-old Darian McClendon and a 4-month-old were found shot outside a home just after 10 o'clock Sunday night. Family members say Darian and his family had been sitting on the porch. They had just returned from a picnic at the park when they were shot. A cash reward of up to $5,000 is being offered for information leading to an arrest. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Haywood with your WWAY Storm Track 3 AccuWeather forecast. Mostly clear skies and quiet weather for tonight. Mild and muggy with a low around 70 degrees. It'll be mostly sunny, very warm and humid for Tuesday. High temperatures reaching around 90 with 80s on the coast. And even a little bit hotter on Wednesday. A lot of sunshine, a few clouds. Highs in the low 90s with mid-80s on the coast. Get the full forecast on WWAY and WWAY-TV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
There has never been a better time to go to college. Class of 2021 high school graduates, you don't want to miss this. You may be eligible to have your tuition and fees covered at Cape Fear Community College for 2 years, beginning this fall through the North Carolina Longleaf Commitment Grant. This is money that does not need to be repaid and covers tuition toward a degree or towards transfer credit to a 4-year school. This is your chance to make it happen at CFCC for free. Find out more at cfcc.edu/NCGrant.
O'Leary's Automotive Repair has multiple locations in the area in Hampstead, Leland, the Myrtle Grove area, Ogden, and Wrightsboro. O'Leary's Automotive Repair, a trusted, locally owned business since 2006.
The Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association serves as the advocate for the building industry, advancing professionalism and promoting community involvement. We are a positive force for responsible growth while protecting property rights and the privilege of home ownership. 3 out of every 5 jobs is touched in some manner by construction in our region. Growth generates jobs, maintains our property values, and builds and updates our infrastructure. Join us Friday mornings for the Construction Connection with the Wilmington Cape Fear Home Builders Association and the Big Talker FM.
All right. Yeah, I don't know why that's being a pain, but that's fine. I have good audio, and I have this, which means Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker the Big Talker Network at Big Talker Live. Please download the Android and iOS device app for your Android and iOS devices. Good morning. It's a Tuesday after the holidays, and there is a lot to go through. This one's not going to be your typical funny show. This one's going to have some punch to it. And I will be assisted by my friend who throws good punches, Mr. Andrew Donaldson of Ordinary Times. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Morning, TK. How are you?
I'm up, and I appreciate your time. You ready for some for a real show from the Asylum?
I find it cute that you're asking me as if you're not going to do it anyway, but proceed, sir.
I'm going to. So we're going to start with some definitions.
Okay.
Apparently, much like the word gay, a number of words in the English language have been hijacked for nefarious purposes. I'm not saying that gay is a nefarious situation, but I can no longer refer to my Christmas garments as gay for fear of upsetting somebody who might be non-heterosexual. You with me so far?
Okay.
I mean, has this happened? It's happened to me.
Okay.
Okay, so gun is a word. 3 letters.
It is.
And it actually is a verb.
Unless you're Peter, then there's 4.
Oh, yes, yes. But then you're an artist and you're a musician and you make more money than I do. But gun is actually a verb as well as a noun. Did you know that?
As is love.
Yes. So you can gun the engine of your car.
Correct.
And if you're running for first base, it is referred to as gunning for first base. If you are climbing,
I have heard that.
And if you're climbing the corporate ladder, you are gunning for the corner office.
Okay.
In none of those 3 examples has anybody died. No.
Well, depends on the Little League coach, but
right.
No.
You're with me for the most part. Now, is a gun a weapon?
Can be.
Can be. Is a weapon a gun? Can be.
Not necessarily.
Right. Is a pencil a weapon? If I jam it into your eye socket and into your brain.
If you're John Wick, yes.
Yes. So weapon is actually a pronoun with a violent connotation.
Okay, I don't know anything about grammar, but I'll take your word for it.
Cain and Abel. The rock is a rock. It's a rock. Once the rock was thrown in anger, it became a weapon. But this is true for every device that you can get you can use a pool cue. You can use a knife, a pencil. So gun and weapon can't really be used interchangeably in this conversation because it obfuscates the issue at hand. So we're going to pay attention, as has been said, the devil or God, as depending on which way you look at the phrase, is in the details. In one example, if you don't get the details right, you don't get to match your module to the ISS. You're familiar with that story. The detail that was missed is that one group of people was using imperial measurements, the other was using metrics. As a result, incompatibility.
That's a bad problem.
That's a very bad problem. But that's my example of if you're not in, if you're not paying attention to the details, and that's what legal speak is all about. Now, shall we turn our attention to the headlines?
It's your show.
Yes. Thank you. You had pointed out a number of times, and I will correlate this, that a headline is an advertisement, right? The whole idea behind a headline is to get you to clicky-click. The story is irrelevant. The accuracy of the story is irrelevant. What is relevant is selling cars, carpets, and candy bars through clicks, clicks, and clicks.
You mention it 6 times a week, yes.
So the need for news outlets to be first is more important than news outlets to be correct.
Depending on the business model, yes.
So let's take Uvalde, Texas as an example. It's recent. It's on mind, right? It's current, it's topical, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
That the headlines that were popping were not entirely accurate.
Okay.
But they did play on the 4 axes of advertising. That is, for an advertisement to be effective, to gain your interaction, for you to engage with an advertisement, it needs to affect you mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and physically.
Correct.
Same thing with a news story. In order to get you involved, they have to play with your emotions, they have to play with your mentality, they have to play with your sense of, yourself, your version of yourself. What is that called? Your self-image?
It's got many, many names, but sure.
But that's the idea, is that now, just like the political campaigns, whether it's for a person or a lobby or an issue, all of those advertisements or news releases or whatever are going to be based on those same 4 axes. So when you see news stories that claim to say the latest about Uvalde, chances are their accuracy is going to take a back seat to their timeliness. Isn't that weird? So now we've determined, just in the first 10 minutes of the show, that we can't really use the word gun because it's not entirely accurate. We can't use the word weapon because a weapon is not limited to one type of item or another, meaning a machete, a bullet, a rock, a pencil. Any of these things can become a weapon depending on its use and intent. Now we're going to get into something weird. You're familiar with force? For those of you who may not be aware, force is equal to mass times acceleration. If you have a 5-pound box traveling at 20 miles an hour, there is a certain amount of force measured in newtons, which none of us can relate to. But that's our measurement for that type of energy. Now, let's do a little mental exercise to sort of get our mindset to understand force. Everybody in this country, in this planet for the most part, has been in a vehicle traveling 60 miles an hour. We know how that feels. We have seen accidents where a car traveling 60 miles an hour hits an immovable wall. We can kind of relate to the amount of damage to the vehicle. Force is independent of size. Pressure is where force becomes applied. So if you apply a force on a large surface area like the front end of a car, the amount of energy being impacted to the wall is spread out over a larger area and therefore not as much damage. If the car was shaped like a bullet and that same 60 miles an hour half-ton force is now hitting the wall at an 1/8 of an inch space as opposed to, 6 foot, there's a lot more damage to the wall. So
that's a lot of math.
That's a lot of math. But I'm going to sort of shape it up a little bit here. So, one more definition. A lot of people have tried to say that a gun is its only purpose is to kill. And I have to say that is absolutely wrong. The gun, by design, is specifically designed to impart as much kinetic energy into a projectile as efficiently as possible. That's it. Sound fair?
Scientifically, yeah.
Exactly. Devil is in the details. So the weapon, the firearm that we are going to be discussing, whether it's one that fits in your hand or requires your entire body to hold, has one purpose, and that is to send a projectile as efficiently downrange as possible. Now, whether that's used to hit glass bottles or aluminum cans or paper targets or little steel plates is independent to that. The firearm itself is simply a machine, a tool designed to impart as much kinetic energy into this bullet as possible, into this projectile as possible. And it can be a bullet, it can be a screwdriver, it can be any number of things. Now, specifically in a firearm, it's transferring or what's the word? From chemical energy into kinetic energy. That transformation, that's what a firearm does. So the gun, as far as the Second Amendment and as far as all my liberal and non-liberal friends, if I have any of either left, the gun is irrelevant. Absolutely 100% irrelevant. And that's why I feel it is absolutely legit in the Second Amendment to own guns. You can own as many guns and as many types. We have spear guns. I have 3 guns right here next to me. I have a heat gun, I have a soldering gun, and I have a glue gun. I don't think I can really hurt anybody significantly with any of these, but that's beside the point. I can weaponize my children. So a weapon doesn't even have to be an object. So now that we've determined that the firearm itself is an inert, inanimate, unemotional animal. Okay? I'm good with that. The problem arises when we load this firearm. Now, when I go to the range, or when I'm buying ammunition to go to the range, I don't own a gun myself, but I understand range therapy. So I head on down to Eastern Outfitters and I buy range ammo. Right? So range ammo is the cheapest stuff there is. All it is a slug with some stuff behind it. You hit bang, you hit the target, boom. However, when going into a store to buy ammunition, you have options. You can buy a full metal jacket 223 round for your Remington. If you're hunting quail with a 223 copper jacket or full metal or a mushrooming style, you're not going to have much of your game left when you hit it. So don't try to tell me or try to explain or justify your purchase of full metal jackets for hunting when there's going to be nothing left of your game to eat when you're done. So maybe instead of looking at the guns, we look at the ammunition. Now, a very bad case scenario as a hypothesis at a gun range where somebody is accidentally shot with a .45 caliber, for example, range ammo. That's what I'm familiar with. According to the surgeons, it will leave about a 1/4 inch hole all the way through the tissue that it hits, and should be a pretty clean, unless it hits a bone or something of this nature. However, we don't have just range ammo accessible to people here in America. We have full metal jacket, we have mushrooming, we have federal firearms that's meant to shatter, right? It fragments upon impact and tears apart the inside of the body or whatever target you hit. So maybe the access to the guns isn't the problem, it's the access to the ammunition. Is that too strange?
Somewhat, but I see what you're getting at.
All right. So, going back to Uvalde and going back to the Buffalo, for example, these have gained the massive headlines, yes?
Yes.
It has dominated the country's, I'm trying to get my mouse to work here, dominated the country's conversation right now. But during the 3 days, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and this has been updated since I last read it, there have been 15 mass shootings with just in Memorial Day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 12 mass shootings. Since Uvalde, there have been 15 mass shootings just in that 1 week. In fact, there was 4 shootings in Houston, Texas during the NRA convention. So discussing is obviously not doing any good. But the mass shootings have already happened again. This is coming from the Washington Post. At least 15 mass shootings have taken place across the United States since Tuesday, from California to Arizona to Tennessee. Memorial Day weekend alone, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, there have been at least 12 mass shootings. These incidents, gleaned from local news reports and police statements, meet the threshold for mass shootings as defined by Gun Violence Archive. That definition is 4 or more people shot or killed, not including the shooter. Several of these shootings occurred at parties, and one at a Memorial Day event. At least 8 people have been killed, 55 injured in mass shootings just on the holiday weekend. Since Uvalde, at least 11 people have been killed and 67 injured in mass shootings. Chief media correspondent Brian Stetler and news anchor at CNN interrupted a broadcast on Sunday about the response to the mass shooting in Uvalde to tell viewers about another mass shooting in Tennessee. Mass shootings like Buffalo and Uvalde become national news, but many mass shootings do not. They just end up being local news stories. Saturday evening, 6 teenagers were injured by gunfire in Chattanooga in what Mayor Tim Kelly said was probably an altercation between other teenagers. The victims, who were aged between 13 and 15, so the age of buying a gun is irrelevant, who were between the ages of 13 and 15, transported to the hospital. 2 had life-threatening injuries. Kelly said he was heartbroken for the families and angry about political inaction. Chattanooga shooting was one of at least 5. Sunday, there was at least 5 mass shootings alone, and one at the Memorial Day Festival in Taft, Oklahoma, said 1 person was killed, 7 were injured, including a minor. The Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation said a suspect turned himself in, was in custody. Meanwhile, 1 person died, 3 others were injured during a shooting at a party in Merced County, California. The shootings continued on Monday when police in Benton Harbor, Michigan were called to an area around a liquor store where a shooting had taken place in the early hours of Monday. 1 man was dead, 6 were injured by gunfire. Around the same time, 2 people died, 2 others injured during a shooting at a party in Port Richmond, Pennsylvania. Victims aged in range from 14 to 21. They found 47 shell casings at the scene. It was the city's second double homicide scene in 2 hours, after a father and his 9-year-old son were shot inside their car in Philadelphia Sunday evening. Let's see, the grim litany of mass shootings began even before the start of the holiday weekend, when police in Anniston, Alabama, said gunfire erupted after a graduation party attended by more than 150 young adults and teenagers as young as 14. 6 people were injured by gunfire. And on Friday afternoon in Michigan, officers in Mecosta County found 3 children under the age of 10 and a woman dead of apparent gunshot wounds when they responded to the report of a man with a gun and shots fired at a private residence. They also found a man with a gunshot wound to the head who was taken to the hospital. Relatives told the news outlet that the children, 3, 4, and 6 years old, were siblings, and the woman was their mother. In the aftermath of the Uvalde shootings, many local leaders and community representatives issued emotional pleas for action. You get that? Emotional pleas. As the Washington Post has reported, it is unlikely that Congress will be able to pass gun reform measures. Now, that's just in the last week. I'm going to go through a little bit of history here, 2019, looking at gun deaths by country. Do you know what the number of all gun deaths, like gun deaths of all causes, what's the number 1 country on the planet for gun deaths, highest total gun deaths? You take a stab?
No. No idea.
Brazil.
What?
Brazil. Brazil had a total of 2019, 49,436 gun deaths. Guess who was number 2?
Don't know.
The United States.
Brazil, especially in places like Rio and the favelas, which are the slum areas, there's extreme amounts of violence, so that would make sense.
Now, gun-related violence occurs all around the world. This is coming from World Population Review. These are the people that concatenate gun violence information. Well, different aspects of population issues like births and deaths, etc. Gun-related violence occurs all around the world, including, to a lesser extent, countries in which guns are illegal. However, out of the estimated slightly over 250,000 gun-related deaths worldwide in 2019, 66% occurred in just 6 countries: Brazil, United States, Venezuela, India, and Colombia. Gun deaths are considered an epidemic in the United States, which leads the world in civilian gun ownership, particularly by those on the left side of the political spectrum. I'll give you that. So the top 8 countries of all causes of gun death in 2019, number 1, Brazil, number 2, United States, followed by Venezuela, Mexico, India, Colombia, Philippines, and Guatemala. Now, nearly 9 out of 10 people killed by gun violence in 2019 were men. The highest number of homicide deaths occurred among people 20 to 24 years old, while the highest number of gun-enabled suicides happened among those between age 55 and 59. Brazil recorded the world's highest number of total gun deaths from all causes combined, nearly 50,000 out of 250,000 worldwide. The United States has the second highest number of total gun deaths at 37 and change. That said, if one isolates the violent gun deaths and adjusts for population size by expressing the rate as a number of homicides per 100,000 people, the list changes significantly. And it does. Check this out. What they've done is they've now taken all the gun deaths and eliminated suicides, accidental, and have gone just for one person killing another. The list changes. It starts with El Salvador. Now check this out. Follow this trend and tell me if you notice a pattern. Number 1, El Salvador. Number 2, Venezuela. Number 3, Guatemala. Number 4, Colombia. Number 5, Brazil. Number 6, Bahamas. Number 7, Honduras. Number 8, U.S. Virgin Islands. Number 9, Puerto Rico. And number 10, Mexico.
U.S. Virgin Islands and Bahamas seem really weird on that list.
It does. They are the only 2 that don't really fit the rest of the 8 package, do they? Because we're basically listing off, and as the next paragraph says, gun violence in Latin America is exceptionally high, due in no small part to the prevalence of criminal gangs and a vibrant drug trafficking industry. The Inter-American Development Bank released a report highlighting several critical factors in Latin American cities that contribute to increased gun violence, including economic deprivation, residential instability, the favelas, family disruption, absence from school, the population's age structure, and alcohol consumption. Gangs are much less of an issue in the United States, yet it is second only to Brazil on the list in total gun deaths. Many people understandably assume the high number of gun deaths in the U.S. is due to mass shootings, which receive frequent attention from the media. But in truth, mass shootings account for a small percentage of gun deaths in the United States. Rather, nearly 2/3 of gun deaths in the United States were suicides. The highest rate of gun use in America is actually suicide, not mass shootings. However, I can't sell cars, candy bars, and carpets on suicide. I can sell cars, candy bars, and carpets on mass shootings. Keep in mind, they are not selling you the truth. They are not selling you news. They are selling you clicks. So if they can spin, and this has been done before, if you check out YouTube, you can look at headlines that have been twisted to hide what they're really about to get you to click. They are relying on your mental, emotional, psychological, and physical response to their words. I will continue. Countries with the highest rates of firearm-related suicide per 100,000 people in 2019. You're not going to believe who was number 1.
Who?
Greenland. Whack, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, who's number 2? That'd be the United States. Now, per 100,000 rather, Greenland 16.36, United States less than half of that at 7.12. But it still occurs for the greatest number of gun deaths in America is suicide, not mass shootings, not homicides, not gun related, not drug related. 63% of the gun deaths in the United States in 2019 were suicides. So we can go nuts on mass shootings. And I get it, especially the school shootings where our children are affected. When the shooting happened in Las Vegas, from the hotel into the country western concert.
Yeah, the one we still don't have a single clue about why it happened because the investigation just floated off into the ether.
Because it didn't involve anybody important. Kids are important, or at least they're great little political shields. Oh my God, we need gun reform because kids were killed. What about the people that were killed in Las Vegas? They don't matter because they weren't young. Is that it? Is that what's up with our culture? May I continue? In contrast to the U.S. and Latin America, gun deaths are extremely rare in countries like Japan and the United Kingdom, Norway, and Australia. These countries have implemented incentives or passed legislation to decrease the number of firearms in circulation. You notice they use the word firearms. They didn't say the number of guns in circulation. They didn't say the number of weapons in circulation. They said the number of firearms in circulation. For example, in July 21, Australia implemented a permanent gun amnesty program in which unregistered firearms could be anonymously, good word, registered or surrendered at police stations. Japan boasts a population of more than 127 million people, about half, more or less, of what we have, right? 300 million. Yet finished 2019 with a gun death rate of only 0.02 per 100,000 people. One major factor in this success is that Japan has some of the strictest gun control laws in the world. For a Japanese citizen to purchase a gun, they must attend an all-day class, pass a written exam, and complete a shooting range test, scoring at least 95% accuracy. Huh? Do we have that here? Do you have to show that you can handle your handgun with 95% accuracy?
No.
It just happened to be in our Second Amendment that I can have a gun. Doesn't mean that I know how to ride, shoot it, and aim it, and clean it, and nothing, but just means I can have it. That really bothers the hell out of me. Candidates will also receive a mental health evaluation. Oh, imagine that. Which is performed at a hospital, not in a courtroom or a police station, and will have a comprehensive background check done by the government. Only shotguns and rifles can be purchased. The class and exam must be retaken every 3 years. That's an extreme example. I'll give you that. And they do a complete breakdown of countries with homicide rates per 1,000, total per 1,000, and suicide per, or 100,000, sorry. And it's amazing. They list, 180 countries in this thing? I have to look it up in I have a database here, which is amazing. When you go deep diving in some of this stuff, you can end up with so much data. So they list 74 countries in this particular list. And looking at some of these, like suicide level, looking at that one, sort ascending. There we go. I'm getting better at this. Kuwait has the lowest suicide rate of the 78 countries they list. 74 countries.
Well, they're also rich. We need to point out.
Yeah, they're not hurting, and the United States is number one. That's what we need to look at. So, the mass shooting again is designed more to affect your emotional need for validation, for you to click and them to sell cars, carpets, candy bars. Now, when doing background checks and sorry, I have two different things in my head at the same time, but they're kind of related. Now, Texas, the wonderful people down there with their own electric grid and a guy who flies to Cancun at the slightest issue, they also have a program in their abortion law that you are rewarded as a citizen for reporting someone getting an abortion. You're familiar with this, yes?
Yes.
Why don't we do that with guns? I know people with guns. I know a lot of people that have firearms of various types and sizes. By and large, most of them are responsible enough and adult enough that I didn't even know they had a gun or that they had the level of guns that they do. That's not my concern. Right? The concern is I know people who I feel are mentally, physically, emotionally, and psychologically compromised and should not have a gun. What am I going to get if I were to ask or recommend to my government to look at this guy saying, I don't think he should have a gun? If you look at his criminal background,
what you're talking about is a red flag law, which is something that some states have, others don't.
But how far of a red flag? I mean, I shouldn't have to do anything because this person has a criminal history with assault, with violence, aggression on it. So this person is already very much likely to use a pencil as a weapon. They will use anything in their hands as a weapon. It's just far more convenient to pull a trigger than to throw a rock or a right hook. So the mental part of it, we should break this down so that people understand what these elements are. The mental aspect of assessing a person, which is what advertisers and news outlets and media outlets do. The mental aspect is the voices in your head, the schizophrenia, the misinformation driving you it's a mental versus psychological. Psychological would be more like your replacement theory type stuff, where you've been psychologically affected and no longer think in terms of rational reality. You are now filtering it through these things. Emotional is obvious, right? A man catches his wife with another man, your emotions run high. Somebody disses you, upsets you, disrespects you, cuts you off in traffic. That's an emotional response. All of these elements are what's going to go into the red flag law. The problem is these are all soft items, right? You can't really convict a person just because they hear voices in their head, right? And if somebody's with a gun, you can't really do much or say much until something happens, right? In New Mexico, at least, it was not uncommon to have somebody with a gun, and the police are like, okay. It's not until he does something can you call the police and say, okay, that guy with the gun I told you about 20 minutes ago, he just shot 5 people. Now the police can do something. Could that change? But it seems like a lot of times that when we have a suspicious feeling and we try to report it, we are told to wait until, we can't do anything. A suspicious character standing next to a car really doesn't warrant the police coming out and doing something about it, apparently. You have to wait until a body is prone and losing hydraulic fluid before the police can respond. Otherwise, it's a violation of your personal rights and your privacy. So there's a lot of elements at play, but unfortunately, I think the conversation has been hijacked by the emotional need to sell cars, carpets, and candy bars by focusing on the most heinous. Again, there was 22 people killed between Uvalde and Memorial Day. How many of those news stories landed on your desk? I'm guessing not a lot.
Yeah, none of them, pretty much.
None of them. Because it's not important until it's time to sell cars, carpets, and candy bars. So when turning down the noise, one of my favorite phrases that I more fully grok now is a result of this. The first thing is to recognize that the news is an entertainment platform. It's a show. It is not journalism with a capital J. by and large. It is designed to get the clicks. Having worked in this industry, I know the stories that come through. I had sit in the edit suite working on a story where I had 18 dead in an airplane crash, and a guy comes behind me and says there's a shooting with 5 dead. Sorry, I have 40 dead. That's how we did our business. If it bleeds, it leads. How much blood is what determines where it's going to go in the show. What's interesting is that because of the emotional content, the emotional pull of the mass shooting in a school, do we overemphasize the most minor, right? The smallest subset of gun deaths in the United States is mass shootings. That's going to make me very unpopular. Because we're focusing on a small subset of what's going on. We're not focusing on what the real problem is. Our relationship with firearms is unhealthy in this country. How far off am I from, because I know I just woke up, I've just got my first cup of coffee. I started looking into this yesterday saying, wait a minute, I think we're looking at this all wrong. One, the words are wrong. Gun is not necessarily what we think it is. A weapon is anything that can be used to hurt another person. And while it is in use as that, is it a weapon? A rock is a rock, before and after I hit you with it. It's only as I'm hitting you with it, is it a weapon? Same thing with the firearm. The firearm itself is not a weapon. It is a tool with a specific design purpose to send a projectile downrange as efficiently with as much kinetic energy as possible. It's us. It's the soft us in here. And we like to shout. We like to argue. We like to throw things at each other rhetorically, proverbially or whatever. But we can't seem to come to grips with what it is we're working with. And this is where I turn, because I am not a smart guy. I know this. I know that there is more that I don't know than I do know. And I can only wrap my head around that which I can relate to. That's why I do things like relate to a car doing 60 miles an hour hitting a wall. Most of us can relate to what that looks like, feels like, sounds like, and the results. But we don't have the understanding of a 5-gram projectile traveling at well over 1,000 feet per second. Right? 1,000 feet per second. That's 10 football fields each second. So when the shooter at Uvalde, the shooter in Buffalo, the shooter, any shooter, the Las Vegas shooter, he was a bit of a distance though, but most of the other shooters, the bullet, the projectile was at full kinetic energy, meaning its muzzle velocity had not dropped. It did not have the time. It did not have the distance to lose any of its kinetic energy, which is why the description of what we saw, of what was seen at Uvalde, is so stomach-turning. Because this 5-gram piece of copper-jacketed or full metal or whatever it was that he used as far as ammunition goes, the amount of energy and pressure on these little tiny human bodies is incomprehensible. In martial arts, we use wood to represent different bones in the body, right? The 1/4 inch represents like the fingers, and the 1/2 inch is more like your forearm, and the 1 inch is more like your femur. So when these guys are kicking boards and snapping them, that lets you know that if that kick hit you, this is the type of damage it would do. We don't have this relationship when it comes to firearms. We are devoid of a connection between what it is we have and what it is we're doing. The people who do wore a uniform. Because I don't know what it's like to go running through the forest holding a weapon, firing at other human beings, and I don't want to. But you're training, because you were trained with firearms in the military, weren't you?
Somewhat.
So you have experience with that type of training. Most people who go into a gun store, Dick's, pawn shop, or a gun swap, or whatever they call those things, they don't. They just think, hey, I got a gun. I can do some damage. Nobody's going to mess with me. I got a gun. Have I missed on anything yet?
Well, in the 45 minutes you've been talking about it, there's a lot there to talk about.
And this is just me being curious, just for a minute, like, wait a minute. What really is going on? Would reducing the types of ammunition help this?
In and of itself, no.
It wouldn't help?
Because you can make ammunition at home.
Yeah, that's true.
You can do your own reloads. But the bigger question is, I talked about this. My buddy Coop, I was on the radio up in West Virginia last week, and I talked to him about it. It's like, maybe we should quit saying we need to have a conversation, because I don't think we're equipped to have the conversation.
We can't.
Part of the reason we're equipped to have the conversation is what you're dealing with, where you're talking about we only cover the shootings we want to cover.
Mm-hmm. And as far as fitting the narrative, I think they give people too much credit. Because they're not trying to change the narrative.
No, it's more laziness than anything else. They're just doing it's the path of least resistance.
And it sells cars, carpets, and candy bars. Because that's the real function of a news department, is to be a product for people to consume, sponsored by the advertisements that they expect you to spend money on because you heard it on Sean Hannity's show or Tucker's show. Or now, we haven't even scratched the surface of the money involved. The NRA operates 3 PACs. One is the Super PAC and 2 additional PACs. The Victory Fund, Political Victory Fund, right, is one of them. They use names that don't have rifle or gun in them. Isn't that tricky? So maybe the conversation should turn to how we handle our lobbyists, how we handle our special interest groups. Maybe we eliminate super PACs and PACs. I think that would be wonderful. Now, PACs and super PACs are limited to $5,000 contribution per candidate. However, they are not limited on what they can do with their own money as far as advertisements and spending. So they may have $7 million in the bank, and they can only give $5,000 to these 20 contestants, so they still have several $1 million left over. They can now run ad campaigns for and against issues and people without any oversight. Would that be a good term?
Kind of, yeah.
So if we eliminated the amount of money in super PAC, if we just eliminated PACs, super PACs, and this type of lobbying money, sure, you can give your $5,000 to the candidate's campaign, that's fine. But no longer are you allowed to shovel millions and millions of dollars into advertisements and structures that undermine the political discourse. The 2 biggest offenders in this arena, number 1, pharma, number 2, firearms. They have the greatest financial influence and clout over our government, state and federal, by the way, than all the others combined. So you want to find an answer to Oxycontin and fentanyl? Eliminate the PACs. You want to find an answer to guns and shootings and deaths in America? Get rid of the PAC. Eliminate their influence on our lawmakers. Laws should come from us. They represent, supposedly, these representatives represent the people. However, all of their voting, all of their decisions, all of their rhetoric, all of their conversations are going to be influenced by money. So the only way that we can have an honest-to-God conversation is if we can level the playing field. And to do so is not...
Never do.
The only way, right, the only way that can be done is one of two ways. Where everybody else is able to raise the amount of money so that they can talk at the same financial level as the NRA or other gun advocates. Or we eliminate their money so that they're now working at our level. But that's not going to happen. And can anyone guess why? We love money. We love power more than we will ever love your kids or your people, your population, your education. And this comes to my final point. The common element to everything that's happened since Buffalo, since Uvalde, since, I'll bet you there's going to be people shot in the street today. The one common element to all of these people that I have found so far, they entered the public educational indoctrination system at age 6. And all of their give a damn and humanity was run right out of their soul. Couple that with the cultural influence. Movies, video games, music videos, gangster rappers. We have all sorts of cultural influence on our collective psyche coming from our entertainment that has desensitized our entire population, for the most part, desensitizes them to the effects and such of death. We are no longer afraid to kill. We might be afraid to die, but we are no longer afraid to kill. That disconnect is what we've done to ourselves through this. That can't be reduced. That can't be reversed either. So the conversation isn't something that needs to happen in Congress. It's not something that needs to happen on the Senate floor. It needs to happen in our neighborhoods. It needs to happen in our churches, in our towns, in our... everywhere that we're not talking about it now. I was afraid I'd...
You there?
Yeah, I'd lost a channel on my board. I'm sorry about that. I was cutting out.
Fine.
So, the same give a damn about human life as a child enters school has the same effect on their ability to respect another person's right to life, right to belief, right to think, right to whatever. That same give a damn, the child that going into the school, age 5, 6, will inherently not litter. They have that awareness. They have been taught by a good parent that, hey, we shouldn't just throw our trash on the ground. So most kids are pretty hip to that. But around age 10, 12, what happens? Their give a damn is already squashed to the point that they're not as concerned about making sure their trash is disposed of. By age 16, these little butter snots are just as blatantly thinking they're all James Dean when they throw their candy bar wrapper on the ground. Their entire attitude and presence of mind and ego has gone out of control, and that's where I think this whole thing starts. We have stripped humanity from these children, entering them into the school system. These kids know that they are a means to money. And it's kind of obvious when we tell them, look, you don't have to know the answers to the test questions. All you got to do is fill in the bubbles, man. You got a 25% shot. You don't even have to crack a book. Just fill in the bubbles. 25% of the time, you're going to get something right. So our standardized testing aren't testing anything other than the student's ability to follow directions. And as a result, the children themselves, certainly as a pandemic, and as you pointed out with your own daughters, they realize it's a farce. The whole thing is a flipping game to make more money. Right? And where's the money going to in the school system? Is it going to the education? Is it going to the teachers? Or is it going to the sports programs and the administration? Let's take a look at the sports programs. Of the sports programs, which sport do you think has the greatest, on average, greatest budget per school? Football. Is it any surprise that football is the most encouraged, the most funded sport in America? NFL, $6 million to be a criminal. I'm looking at you, Ray Rice. These are people that have been known as drug pumping, you know, because, sorry, steroids is a drug, and you're pumping it into your body. It turns you into an angry man. To the point that you're incapable of actually living a normal life. Right? How many normal people in, say, the arts? Yo-Yo Ma. Could you ever see Yo-Yo Ma as an angry person shooting another?
Yes, break his cello. Watch what happens.
That's what it would take. But by and large, these are going to be balanced human beings, which is why I appreciate my artist friends, whether they are musicians, painters, sculptors, dancers, because they have connected with their humanity. They have learned and found a way to express themselves. Now, in the case of the Uvalde kid, his, you know, one of the issues or bits that came out is that, you know, he was not comfortable expressing himself because of his desire to be of an alternate lifestyle or whatever in this tiny little super conservative, straight white-laced town. Or not white, I mean, you know, straight-laced, missionary, heterosexual, that sort of thing. Right? Our 50s model of the normal person. Through the arts, we learn to express ourselves, and through the arts, have we learned to connect with the humanity that is within ourselves. We respect, we connect with the human condition, so that we no longer have the split. Because in football, you are encouraged to crush your enemy. In the arts, you are taught to support your community. In football, they call it a team dynamic, when actually, this is the nascent beginnings of an echo chamber. If you think about it, a football team is its own macrocosm of Fox News. Because there's not going to be an open conversation that, well, maybe the Eagles, our rival team, they're not such bad guys. No, that's not how it goes. We're going to crush them. We're going to stomp them. We're going to run right over them. We're going to... Do you hear that when you go to a symphony concert of students? Mm-mm.
Well, if you go to Metallica's S&M.
But that's what I'm saying. In a high school, the same group, an underfunded musical program is going to be far more, to me, grown up. It's going to be far more mature and far more human than any football game will ever be. But what is the funding for arts, whether it's sculpture, painting, pottery, glass blowing, sketching, music, versus the amount of money going into sports like football, where you are encouraged to crush your enemies, where the entire brain set, the entire mindset is exactly what it is we're trying to fight in our open population. I honestly believe that if we were able to revamp the educational system from the top down and start applying education to the person, not to the test, not to the administration, not to the financial responsibility, but to the students, these students are going to be fully rounded human beings. They're not going to be little information bubbles, right? And let's look at another parallel. When in school, how many of the bullies are from the orchestra and how many bullies are from football team? Have you ever been shoved in a locker as a kid?
No.
Okay, I was, with my cello.
We had small lockers.
So not for lack of trying, I guess. So none of this is fun, but we don't want to. We love our NFL, we love our beer, we love our guns. We don't like art until it's a half-naked chick dancing on a screen, on a stage, or swinging on a wrecking ball, or, you know, with little flowers coming out her butt.
Leave Miley out of this. Leave Miley out of this. She don't do anything.
All of them, man. Even the ones with talent, they get dressed up in all this crap because we don't buy the talent. We buy the crap. We buy the flashies. We buy the confetti blowing and the lights twirling and the half-naked body. That's what we're paying for. That's what we're interested in. We're basically a softcore gun-toting country. We don't care about, we call it pro-life or whatever, but until that child is born and does something at around the age of 18, do we start throwing money on the floor for them to dance on the pole? Which is further encouragement for people to not develop themselves. Like TikTokers and influencers and politicians who have no marketable skill and no actual contribution to society that they have turned. Clay Aiken, he has no other marketable, he had no marketable skill. I don't even think he had an other when he lost on The Voice. And yet he runs for Congress, I think it was, here in North Carolina. Really? Most of the people, look at Nancy Pelosi. When she entered office, she was worthless. Now she's worth $114 million. How the hell did that happen? It didn't happen by supporting music and the arts. So maybe our conversation is in the completely wrong room. You want kids that don't kill kids? Raise kids that understand what it is to be a kid. Give them the crayons, for Christ's sake. Pound for pound, crayon creates more art than all other mediums combined. But for some reason around age 5 or 6, we take the crayon away and tell them not to express themselves anymore and to now conform to the little bubbles on the state standardized test at the end of the year. And to have fun with some of the conversation, I've heard people say, hey, we should give guns to the teachers. Wait a minute. The people in my circle who have made this comment, I had to say, wait a minute. You also don't trust these same teachers to choose the books for them to read. And now you're going to give them a handgun? Really? At what point do you feel that their weapon is not already in the classroom? It's called a book. It's called reasoning. It's called getting uncomfortable and learning how to deal with it. And I would think there's no better place to do that than in a school. Yes, you're challenged. That's what school does. It challenges
Not our school. Not our schools. Not what our schools do now.
Do they?
Our unicorn theory of what schools should be, but that's not what our schools do. Our schools are built to get standardized testing correct so we can get funding.
And this maybe could be part of the conversation?
It should be.
So if we're going to talk about gun control, right? And I'll give the NRA this one, or the gun toters 2As this one. Gun control, just like Japan, means both hands on target. And to me, I would think one of the just a starting point. You can own all the guns you want, but you, like Claritin, are limited to buy 30 rounds in a month. How's that?
That's
Because think about it,
got all
Claritin.
kinds of legal implications, but that's a horrible idea. But
Is
30
it?
rounds is not.
Is it?
30 rounds is nothing.
Right, 30 rounds is nothing. But what I'm saying is, I can't buy more than 30 tablets of Claritin, and I have to present my ID, and I have to
That's
sign a
stupid as
form.
well. That's addiction theater, but that's another
It
topic
is.
for another day.
But you see, what they've done is inconvenienced everybody for the outside shot that it's going to reduce drug production. Is it working? I don't think we can really gauge that right now. But it certainly made it into legislation that any time that I go to, get my sinuses cleared with a little decongestant, I have to present more ID than I do when I buy a firearm. And I can only buy, even if I go back to the same guy, hey, Bob, I've seen you again this week. Yeah, my nose is kind of clogged up. You can't get Claritin because you've already bought your allotment for Claritin for this month. Who the hell are you to tell me what I can and cannot do?
Well, I can tell you something that you can and can't do.
What's that?
You can take a break because it's 9:06.
You be here in a minute?
I've got to go. I got 2 different interviews, so I got to find a stopping point somewhere. But you are on a roll, my friend.
I appreciate your patience.
I don't think you needed me for this, quite frankly. You seem to be doing just fine on your own, but thanks for letting me listen.
Part of it is that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't completely off base, because I know that much like any echo chamber or isolated person, we tend to get caught in our own little stream of consciousness and forget that maybe there's other people. So my idea of limiting and doing what we do for Claritin with bullets, to me it seems like a good idea, but now I have somebody who can introduce me to why that isn't a good idea, which will affect how I see what is a good and not a good idea when coming to this. That's why we have Big Talker. That's why we have Hertel. That's why we have Ordinary Times. That's why we are not sponsored or associated with things like ABC News or any of the news outlets. The news outlets you get are from us, the writers, the producers, the hosts.
Yeah.
And with that in mind,
do better with it.
Maybe one day I'll be good at this and I'll have friends again.
You're doing a good job as it is. That was good for an hour.
So with that in mind, I should let my friend go because he is far more busy and popular than I am. But I thank you for being there as something of a safety net so I don't do something incredibly stupid.
We do try.
And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, remember, Andrew Donaldson, ordinary-times.com, Hertel Radio, 8 in the morning, or 7 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon. Twitter handle, if I remember this correctly, 4 for the fire.
Correct.
Spelled the number 4, then the number 4, and then fire. 4 for the fire. So, ladies and gentlemen, please don't go nowhere. The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. We'll be right back after these messages on the Big Talker Network, BigTalker.live.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Cleanup is underway after a fast-moving blaze destroyed a Calabash home late Sunday night. Just before 11 o'clock, Calabash firefighters were called to a fire on Wampy Street in the Oceanside Place subdivision. Firefighters found the one-story home fully engulfed in flames. Despite their best efforts, that home was a total loss. The fire was so intense, several nearby homes sustained minor damage as well. Fortunately, the people inside escaped without injury, and the Red Cross is helping them find temporary lodging. The Brunswick County Fire Marshal's Office investigator says the blaze appears to have started accidentally on a back patio and screened-in porch area, but the exact cause remains under investigation. The application period for Phase 2 of the state's Business Recovery Grant Program closes Wednesday. The Department of Revenue's program is looking to help businesses that struggled or had to partially shut down during the pandemic. The grant amount is a percentage of the economic loss demonstrated by the eligible business, or $500,000, whichever is less. A business that was ineligible during Phase 1 because it received other COVID-19 relief may now be eligible for a grant in Phase 2. In Wrightsville Beach, Ocean Rescue reports more than a dozen rescues over the past few days, with the majority being related to rip currents. Ocean Rescue Captain Sam Prophet says the team anticipated the rise in rescues due to the number of visitors. Prophet says the risk of rip currents is low for now, but he advises people to swim near lifeguard stands if possible. Police in Monroe in Union County are investigating a fatal shooting Sunday night. Officers say 25-year-old Darian McClendon and a 4-month-old were found shot outside a home just after 10 o'clock Sunday night. Family members say Darian and his family had been sitting on the porch. They had just returned from a picnic at the park when they were shot. A cash reward of up to $5,000 is being offered for information leading to an arrest. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Haywood with your WWAY Storm Track 3 AccuWeather forecast. Mostly clear skies and quiet weather for tonight. Mild and muggy with a low around 70 degrees. It'll be mostly sunny, very warm and humid for Tuesday. High temperatures reaching around 90 with 80s on the coast. And even a little bit hotter on Wednesday. A lot of sunshine, a few clouds. Highs in the low 90s with mid-80s on the coast. Get the full forecast on WWAY and WWAY-TV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by Two Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to twomenandatruck.com. twomenandatruck.com.
Government has become too big, too overtaxing, and is constantly overregulating every aspect of your life.
If you agree with that, tune into Consumer Choice Radio every Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big Talker 106.7 FM. With me, Yael Osowski.
And me, David Clement. For an hour, you'll get expert analysis on what the government is sinking its teeth into next, and how you, as a consumer, can push back.
ConsumerChoiceRadio.com.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Welcome back to the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad, right here on the Big Talker Network. BigTalker.live is the website. Please send us an email with any questions, comments, concerns, compliments, or critiques you may have. We cannot improve without your help. We are your radio station. I just happen to be the ugly person sitting in the seat. If you want to come toss me from my chair, please give us a call, 910-444-0281. That gets you into the building anyway, and then we can we'll discuss it from there. Today's conversation has been a lot about how gun violence in America is misunderstood and misspoken about. Oh yeah, give me a minute. We're going to come up with some more data. Stand by. Take two. There we go. All right. Thank you, White Bat Audio, for the incredible soundtracks that are better than the ones I made in iTunes. But yeah, following this through. We're all upset about the mass shootings, right? So the one in Buffalo involved a lot of people. But it wasn't until the kids were shot in Uvalde did the next news story become a big deal. And since that story in Uvalde, there's been 15 other shootings with 4 dead and how many else? 55 injured. 8 8 people killed, 55 injured in mass shootings over the holiday weekend. They just end up being local stories. 6 teenagers injured by gunfire in Chattanooga, Tennessee. What the hell were 6 teenagers doing with guns in Chattanooga, Tennessee? A lot of these questions, a lot of these conversations are not going to happen because we cannot be uncomfortable. We can't have hard conversations when we're so upset about just being woke. Right? There's so much we need to come to terms with. And it's just not going to happen if we don't have a way of handling ourselves being uncomfortable. And we're so afraid to make mistakes that we won't make any moves. And the mistakes that we're worried about making are painful, right? Because the mistakes the mistakes that these politicians are afraid to make are going to cost them money. Cost them money. So think about it. Your children's lives, or the lives of these children in Uvalde specifically, because they've already been killed, equate in value to the amount of money that gun advocates and gun groups give to these people to not have that conversation, or to adopt the rhetoric and come up with some crap like the door is to fall, the door is to blame. I think Claritin is to blame, because since we don't have access to proper nasal care, that we get upset. And I can buy all the guns and bullets I want without restriction, but I can't buy Claritin more than 1 box a month. What the hell are we legislating? Why? And why is it upside down? Why is it backwards? How the hell did we get here? We got here because of people like MTG. We got here because of people like Boebert, Meadows, Trump. Right? A lot of these people that are having the wrong conversation and distracting us, distracting all of America by way of the news machine to misrepresent what's happening. To skew the conversation based on access. Only one door. If there was, and that door was unlocked, he just walked right in the back door. Had he been aware of his humanity and had been taught how to deal with difficult emotional situations as a child in a safe place, his response to this, whatever it was that caused him to do this, would have been far more tempered, and he would have probably written a song. Oh my God, how many people are killed by songs? I think one person in the history of the world has been killed by a sculpture because it fell on them. Our conversations are the wrong direction, the wrong subject, the wrong emphasis, and the wrong words. Gun. I know a lot of jerks around here with little squat trucks that gun their engines all the time. We have to be careful with the words. Because I can say the word gun, but do you know for a fact that I'm not talking about a runner on first base heading to second? Or am I talking about revving my engine? Or am I talking about inflicting damage on another person with a firearm? We as a nation, on average, have the vocabulary and comprehension of an 8th grader. Believe that? That's right. That's frightening. Our education system, as Carlin put it, Well, okay, no. He had a good start. I'm going to give it to Andrew on this one. It's a federally funded daycare jobs program. In Carlin's words, he was saying, yeah, they don't want you, they're not training you to be smart. They're training you so that you can push the buttons and make the machines work and vote when it comes time. And that you're dumb enough, uneducated enough, unable to challenge what you are being presented. Then we have a society that's going to vote for the powerful that have been in power. The rich are the ones that are getting elected, not the smart. Smart people, for real, don't want anything to do with politics. They saw what happens over there. No, the smart people want nothing to do with that. But the stupid people with egos the size of Texas, they love it. And think about it. Once you get into office, Nancy Pelosi was worth, nothing. Now she's worth $114 million after 25 years in office. How does that happen, ladies and gentlemen? How does that happen? Oh, it happened because we built the system to work that way. So whose fault is it? How do we get to this point? How do we get away from this point? We are now on the edge of a cliff. And, hey, come on, computer, don't do this to me. We are on the edge of a cliff. How do we back away? How do we back away safely? How do we back away? How do we... It's going to start with education. It's going to end with education. Unfortunately, I don't think this truth is going to be realized until long after I'm dead. So I won't be here to roll around in my car with my middle finger in the air saying, I told you so. But if we're going to continue to ban books, we are going to continue to exacerbate the problem. Many of the books that are banned, do you know why they were banned? Because they made the parents uncomfortable. These are uncomfortable topics. We need to have these discussions. We need to understand that there are a list of internal and moral priorities. They may not all be right. They may not all be wrong. But they all are there. We need to, more than entertain them, we need to discuss them. We need to flesh them out. We need to understand and teach these kids that they are not that unique. Being an individual is one thing, but being unique, Every other kid on the planet has been bullied. Some responded by becoming bullies because their parents bullied them. Others become helpers. They become empaths or empathetic because they know what it's like to be bullied and they don't want anybody else to feel that. But until we can have these conversations in a safe place, they'll never happen. And if they never happen, these people, whether it's a child or some, psychotic dude with a manifesto and some theory that just grew in his own skull, that's what's going to cause the problem. And until we can have those conversations, there is no solution. It's going to be the same crap, selling the same cars, the same carpets, the same candy bars, the next time 15 people are shot to death in some place. And we've changed the bar, it seems, right? So, as a kid, one person killed was like, that's bad. And when somebody dies by accident, that's a tragedy. An airplane fell, 450 people were killed. We are anesthetized. We are desensitized to what that means. There are 450 people that will not see tomorrow. There's 450 people that will not be there with their families at holiday. 450 less people having less people, influencing less people. That's the end. Absolute. And in an accident, there's no real, maybe pilot error or whatever, but still it's an accident that's not really attributed to any sort of malicious, nefarious action or behavior. In the case of a shooting, whether one person is shot or 50 people are killed, right? Because being shot doesn't mean you're dead. It just means you were shot. I've been shot. It sucks. I didn't die. It wasn't that bad of a shot. The guy was a bad shot. I'll say that. But the fact that we can't have these discussions is going to be of greater importance going into our future. That if we want to correct these issues now, it can't happen turning on a dime. Just not going to happen. We need to start again back with our education system. And make sure that the kids aren't, or the teachers aren't equipped with guns. What they're equipped with is knowledge. Knowledge to acknowledge, to recognize the patterns in these children and say, hey, how can I help you reconnect with your humanity? Because these dark thoughts and this replacement theory or whatever it is you're talking about, let's chat about that and see if we can't come up with something that helps you understand what's right and what's wrong with this issue. Right? I've heard that the greatest enemy, I guess, to ignorance is travel. But unfortunately, these kids in Uvalde, Texas are not going to be able to afford to travel around the world and meet other people. Just can't happen. However, we can bring other people to them. How's that? We can bring those conversations to them. We can make the child feel a little uncomfortable in a safe place. That's what psychologists do. Right? They've been using toys to sort of ascertain the mental balance of a child for centuries. Well, okay, at least decades that I know of. But at any given time, depending on how they behave with the role-playing animals or creatures or whatever, the little T set, that's what's going to do. That's a greater understanding of what the child is experiencing and how they view the world. However, we seem to have a problem with making that balance happen. Because if we were to balance the education of what they need to fill in the little bubbles to make the money for the administration, we can also explore the uncomfortable concepts introduced by To Kill a Mockingbird, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, any number of these situations. And hell, I think it would even be a great idea to bring the very mental issues that are affecting the people now into those classrooms. Discuss what narcissism is at age 4 or grade 4. They can handle it. Right? Chances of them, they have siblings themselves that are narcissistic little bastards. Have the discussions about bullies. In the class. In the school. Don't talk about guns in the school. Talk about why people want a gun. And I still say that access to ammunition should be as at least as regulated as Claritin. It doesn't make me popular, I'm damn sure for that, but I'm all right with that. It's got to be uncomfortable because we're not going to come to a solution while we're all trying to be nice and gentle to each other. That's how people get killed. That's how people die, for Christ's sake. Can we figure this out? Let's have uncomfortable conversations. Let's make mistakes. Because only by mistakes do we learn how to do things right. Don't go nowhere. The Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. Will be right back after these messages right here on the Hertel Network.
Hello, I'm Matt Bennett with WWAY News. Cleanup is underway after a fast-moving blaze destroyed a Calabash home late Sunday night. Just before 11 o'clock, Calabash firefighters were called to a fire on Wampy Street in the Oceanside Place subdivision. Firefighters found the one-story home fully engulfed in flames. Despite their best efforts, that home was a total loss. The fire was so intense, several nearby homes sustained minor damage as well. Fortunately, the people inside escaped without injury, and the Red Cross is helping them find temporary lodging. The Brunswick County Fire Marshal's Office investigator says the blaze appears to have started accidentally on a back patio and screened-in porch area, but the exact cause remains under investigation. The application period for Phase 2 of the state's Business Recovery Grant Program closes Wednesday. The Department of Revenue's program is looking to help businesses that struggled or had to partially shut down during the pandemic. The grant amount is a percentage of the economic loss demonstrated by the eligible business, or $500,000, whichever is less. A business that was ineligible during Phase 1 because it received other COVID-19 relief may now be eligible for a grant in Phase 2. In Wrightsville Beach, Ocean Rescue reports more than a dozen rescues over the past few days, with the majority being related to rip currents. Ocean Rescue Captain Sam Prophet says the team anticipated the rise in rescues due to the number of visitors. Prophet says the risk of rip currents is low for now, but he advises people to swim near lifeguard stands if possible. Police in Monroe in Union County are investigating a fatal shooting Sunday night. Officers say 25-year-old Darian McClendon and a 4-month-old were found shot outside a home just after 10 o'clock Sunday night. Family members say Darian and his family had been sitting on the porch. They had just returned from a picnic at the park when they were shot. A cash reward of up to $5,000 is being offered for information leading to an arrest. For more on these stories, you can head over to WWAYTV3.com. I'm Matt Bennett. Have a great day.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Lee Haywood with your WWAY Storm Track 3 AccuWeather forecast. Mostly clear skies and quiet weather for tonight. Mild and muggy with a low around 70 degrees. It'll be mostly sunny, very warm and humid for Tuesday. High temperatures reaching around 90 with 80s on the coast. And even a little bit hotter on Wednesday. A lot of sunshine, a few clouds. Highs in the low 90s with mid-80s on the coast. Get the full forecast on WWAY and WWAYTV3.com.
This news and weather is brought to you by 2 Men and a Truck. For your free quote, go to 2menandatruck.com. 2menandatruck.com.
Tune in to the WWAY News at 6 p.m.
Thank you for joining us tonight. For your news at 6, I'm Hannah Patrick.
I'm Randy Aldridge. We want to get straight to our WWAY team coverage of last night.
For the biggest and most compelling stories that make a difference.
On the scene shortly after the blaze began and has the story now.
Leland is one of the fastest growing towns in the country.
First court appearance this morning in Pender County.
WWAY News at 6 p.m. This is the place.
I'm K.O. Davis from K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree, and I want to be your tree man.
When your trees need cut, 2 letters to know. One is a K, the other is an O. K.O.
Tree man. Proper trimming is the most important thing that you can do, so don't just hire anybody to do it. You need someone that knows what they're doing.
K.O.
Call the professionals at K.O.'s Coast to Coast Tree and visit KOTrees.com.
Enjoying Big Talker Network is as easy as asking for it. Program your digital home assistants such as Google Home, Alexa, and Siri to stream Big Talker Network content by simple voice command. Enjoy convenient hands-free access to program whenever you want, however you want by asking for Big Talker.
Are we there? We are. All right. It's hard to focus. I understand that a lot of people are angry. The people with a real right to be angry are the ones who have lost loved ones to this stupidity. Everyone else is angry on their behalf is an asshole. If you're going to be angry, let's get angry about what's really happening. Let's look at some data. Instead of knee-jerk reaction to a emotional response, which is what these stories are designed to do, I can sell you a more expensive car if I pull on your emotional strings, mess with your psychological self, question your physical status, and I get inside your head. But if I present you the data, you have to reassess everything that you believe based on that. Like the Catholic Church or the Boy Scouts or what's that guy, Nasser, the U.S. gymnastics doctor guy. Because we can polish this over, wash this over, we can make it all go away. And if we just hunker down, if the NRA would have just waited 2 more weeks, this would have all blown over and there wouldn't have been any musical cancellations. There wouldn't have been any... the company that made the gun that the guy in Uvalde used was shamed out of appearing at the NRA. No, I think they should have been there, and they could have answered questions. And to the people that are giving money to the NRA, do you know what you're giving your money to? Do you? Because their their financial arm is actually under political action committees that do not contain the word gun or rifle in them. How's that? But let's look at these numbers again. And I'm going to look at one set of numbers that makes us very uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. United States is number 2 in the world for firearm-related suicides. I'll say it again for the people in the back and the people with their head in the sand. United States is number 2 on the planet for firearm-related suicides. Mass shootings are one of the smallest subsets of homicides. It's like 2% of homicides are mass shootings. The rest are like what I reported on the day-to-day in Houston. While in Houston, 6 people were shot in different situations. All within just a few miles of the NRA that had 50,000, quote, good guys with guns. And the big draw for the NRA was Fat 45. What's interesting is Fat 45, for all the pro-gun that he is, banned the guns while he was there. What does that tell you? Good for me, but not for thee. How's that? Number 2 in the world for firearm-related suicide. Number 1 is Greenland. I don't know what the hell is going on up there. They're 16.36. We're 7.12. More than twice the number of firearms-related suicide in Greenland. Life in Greenland must just absolutely suck. Number 3, Uruguay. Number 4, San Marino. Number 5, Montenegro. Number 6, Argentina. Number 7, believe it or not, Finland. Number 8, Monaco. Number 9, France. Number 10, Venezuela. What's interesting is how the numbers drop. Greenland, 16.36. United States, 7.12. Uruguay, 4.74. San Marino, 4.08. Montenegro, 3.40. Then we drop further. Argentina, 2.67. Finland, 2.66. Monaco, 2.64. France, 2.64. Venezuela, 2.5. But when adjusted for homicides, Venezuela is number 2 at 33.27. El Salvador, that's not even on the suicide top 10, is number 1 in homicide deaths. El Salvador, Venezuela, Guatemala, Colombia, Brazil, Honduras, Puerto Rico, Mexico. The Bahamas and the U.S. Virgin Islands, it's a little weird, and I'm going to bet that's going to be skewed by tourists and tourist money. And, of course, gangs and drugs servicing them. But mass shootings, let's, A smaller subset of gun deaths occur as the result of mass shootings and school shootings, which are often highly publicized because it sells cars, carpets, and candy bars. So if we're going to have a conversation about an uncomfortable subject, we have to, somewhere along the way, learn how to have these conversations, how to be uncomfortable and be okay with it. And to me, that goes hand in hand with an earlier rant I had on being, understanding support, understanding the role of being supportive. That's what being a cello player, being a bass player, being a parent is about. You're a support system for the little star. And we need to all recognize that we are not all entitled to be stars. We are, however, required, demanded, responsible, onus. It is on us, onus, to police our neighborhoods, to police our people, to police everything. So, how does this work? Red flag laws. I don't know if I understand that concept completely. But it does seem a bit unfair, or unbalanced, if you will, that we are encouraged, at least in Texas, to report somebody who may have an abortion, to prosecute them to the full extent of the law. But what would it be if we were to report somebody who has a gun that we think is probably not responsible, mature, stable, balanced to own a gun? I'll give you a couple examples. If you have to strap up more hardware than a Marine in Afghanistan to get coffee at the Starbucks, you should not have a gun. Or maybe you should have as many guns as you want and absolutely no bullets. Because obviously you are a performative 2A. The people that I understand to fully respect the 2A, you would never know they had a gun. Right? And to me, that's being responsible. It's kind of like being gay. I shouldn't know that you're gay unless you tell me. And if you tell me, why are you telling me? Are you trying to convert me? Evangelize me? What's the purpose of your performative bullshit? Oh yeah, I got open carry and I can carry this thing everywhere and everywhere. Why? What have you done in your life that you feel a need for a gun, for a weapon, for a firearm? Right? My roommate pointed out that, we're not hurting. We're able to pay the bills and we're able to eat. But we're not jet setting around the world and we're not buying solid gold framed glasses or sitting on a gold toilet. And whatever it is that I do acquire, I'm not going to flaunt it like a red flag in front of all the bulls in the neighborhood. Hey, come rob me. There's a lot of personal responsibility that goes with freedom. And a lot of times that's not exercised. Exercising the freedom, we have no problem with. That's my right, I'm entitled. But damn it, it comes with a responsibility. You are responsible to not be a jackass. You are responsible for your own education, for your own understanding of human condition. It is your responsibility to look around you and pay attention to what's going around you and to help people around you. That's what I was taught, independent of the Boy Scouts, but the Boy Scouts put a lot of that in there. If you see somebody laying on the side of the road and they're hurt and rolling, it should be part of your inherent responsibility as a citizen, as a person, as a human, to stop and render aid. Miss Mead, Mrs. Mead, what I can't remember her first name. Gloria Mead? I can't remember. She was the anthropologist with the monkeys or the gorillas, whatever. Okay, so they asked her a question about, when do you think society began? And she related a story of a femur. They found the skeleton of a like early human that had a broken femur that had healed. Now, think about it. I had to. Long, long ago, long before ambulances or communication or language or anything of this nature, we were all just a bunch of mammals competing for various resources, including food and, places to mate, places to not be bothered when mating. That if you broke your leg, you were dead. There were no healed leg bones. If you broke your leg, you became food because you were unable to get away, you were unable to fight, you were unable to stand. Not even stand your ground. You can't even stand up. Your leg's broken. Your femur is broken. You are not running, evading anything. So society started when somebody attended to this person. Or maybe it was more than one. Because somebody had to bring them food, bring them water, and attend to them while their leg healed. That, to me, was an eye-opening definition of civilization. That's when we became civilized. Since then, we have done our damnedest to reverse that course. You don't believe me? 49,436 Brazilians were killed in 2019 with guns, with firearms. United States in 2019, 37,038 people killed by firearms. Venezuela, 28,515 people. These are numbers, right? No. These are fathers, husbands, sons, daughters, wives, mothers, grandchildren. Mexico, 22,116 people dead. India, 14,710. Colombia, 14,000. 13,000. Colombia, 13,169. Philippines, 9,267. Guatemala, 5,980. In a single year. So there's 365 days in a year. So any number greater than 365 means that more than one people died per day. If there are over 730, that means at least 2 people died per day on average in 2019. Let's take America's number, the United States, because all of these are America. Brazil is American. Venezuela is American. Mexico is American. Colombia is American. Guatemala is American. Maybe not North American, but part of the American continent. All right? So, here's my calculator. And the United States had 37,038 people. And I'm going to divide that by 365, which tells me that over 100 people were killed by firearms every single day in the United States. 100 people every day killed by firearms. But the conversation, if you were to stop there, is not complete. It's wrong. Now, gun deaths are considered an epidemic in the United States, which leads the world in civilian gun ownership. And considered this epidemic, particularly those on the left side of the political spectrum. They're wrong. But so are the people on the right side of the political spectrum. They're wrong because they have chosen these chunks of data and ignoring the others to just say this or that. But the one thing that nobody has spoken about yet is the number of suicide deaths by firearm. Not pills, not poison, not machete, not knife, not any firearm-related suicide. 7.12 per 100,000. We are number 2 in the world for suicide by firearm. That's a conversation. And why do we have this type of number? What is it in the American culture that is so grand and so wonderful and so great, MAGA heads, that we have the second highest suicide rate by firearm in the world? Answer that, and we can solve all of the mass shooting and school shooting problems. Because the same issues that underlie those suicides are the exact reasons that are going to be underlying the murders. The whole need for a gun. And again, if I can be rewarded for reporting somebody for contemplating or having an abortion, what incentive do we have to, you know, hey, this guy has a gun and I really don't think he should have one. But that opens the door, as I'm sure many people are going to point out, and I hope my friend Paul Vallone will join us next Monday and push back a little bit on this from his perspective. That opens a whole slippery door to, you know, do away with your neighbor. My neighbor has a gun, and I don't think he's unbalanced. I mean, there's a lot that I don't agree with, but I got to let it fly. I have to. Because as much as I can sit here and rail against the United States government, the North Carolina government, the county governments, the Texas government, the different entities that allowed 22 people to be killed within an hour at one school. Come on. Well, 21, I'm not sure what the final count is, because again, the news is more interested in selling cars, carpets, and candy bars than they are about getting it right. And to sell those cars, carpets, and candy bars, they need the most sensationalized headlines. Even if it's not correct, we can print a retraction or issue a retraction or a correction later. But to get the clicks, to get the candy bars, and to show the advertisers, hey, look, when we published this story, however wrong it was, we got 5 million clicks in 10 minutes. You want to advertise with us. That's how the game works. That's the anatomy of advertisement. They're going to find something about you that makes you uncomfortable about your physical self. It could be that maybe you're going bald and you need the men's hair club or Rogaine. You're being shamed for being bald. And therefore, to correct it, to not be a heinous, frightening eyesight for children, you need to grow some hair. Or maybe it's the right makeup. Your makeup is smearing, so you need to spend money on this makeup because physically you look like hell if you're not using Estee Lauder. Right? That's the whole idea behind advertisement, is to make you uncomfortable and then to attack your emotion and prey. You are prey. You are manipulated in ways that are insulting beyond reason. They go after your mental state. They go after your emotional state. Don't you want to be happy? Don't you want your family to be happy? They go after the psychological. That's where these conspiracy theories and tinfoil hats and colanders and replacement theory and critical race and all this other stuff. That's psychological warfare. What the Army calls psyops, right? It's not there to inform you. We need people like the World Population Review to do that. Because these are people that are not going to be going after the big money and trying to get big advertisers. I mean, they do have a couple of ads running on their page. I'm not going to lie. They have one. And it looks like it's one of those ad choice playthroughs, right? And for some reason, it looks at my browser history and realizes I surf a lot of music and music clothes. And that's what they're offering me as a jazz t-shirt right next to firearm-related deaths rate per 100,000. And there's nobody shouting at me. There's no famous person on here trying to extend their own brand. And nobody here is trying to sell me something that I don't already like. Tucker Carlson trying to say that he's one of the everyman when he has never had to stress a bill in his life. But his base is made up of people that are too stupid to realize that he is not one of them. Tucker said it must be true. Turbo said it must be true. I don't know. But the conversations we need to have are not about the firearms themselves. It's the people. It's our culture. And that culture, the most common denominator to all of these psychotic bad people, is their education system. There are guns all around the world, and very few of them have the issues. I will say less of them. On all of these lists that I have in front of me, and I can go through by country, right? Oh, it appears above the graphic. All right. Greece. Firearm-related death per 100,000 in 2022, 1.52. In America is 12.21 for the same period. South Africa, 8.3. United States, 12.2. Brazil, 21.9. America, 12.2. Mexico, 7.6. America, 12.2. Australia, 1.04. America, 12.2. Canada, 2.05. America, 12.2. Russia, oh, they showed it. Yeah, there it is. Russia. They don't even have data. Let's look at Kazakhstan. No data. No data on Iran, Iraq, Syria, Turkey, 1.95. America, 12.2. What was that little tiny country right there? Georgia, 1.98 per 100,000. Suicide rate, 0.09. Greenland. Yeah, they don't even have that on there for 2022. Suicide, 1.63 in Norway, whereas overall is 1.75. Their homicide rate is their homicide rate in Norway is so small that it's inside their error rate, that they can't even say, you know, it's plus or minus 0.2%. But they show a homicide rate of 0.1%. 1.63 suicide rate, but a very low homicide rate. Zimbabwe, 0.3 homicide, 0.09 suicide in Zimbabwe. We want to talk about third world shitholes and such, and we seem to have some sort of weird metric for that. Right here in America, we're all over it. Homicide rate per year, 4.46. Suicide rate per year, 7.32. Why aren't we having this discussion? This is not encouraging. This is, and I don't mean encouraging for ourselves or for our future. What I'm talking about is just encouraging to have a conversation. If we can't even agree to the terms, if we can't even agree to what the problem is, it's not the firearm. All right? All my liberal friends are going to hate me for that. It's not the firearm. The firearm was not specifically designed to kill. So stop with that and understand that the actual production concept of a firearm is to impart as much kinetic energy into the projectile as efficiently as possible. That's it. It's a tool. What you choose, what a person chooses to use that tool for, determines whether it's a effective, helpful tool or a weapon. And what's interesting is we misunderstand weapon. If I write a scathing article that gets people in trouble, my words are my weapon. The pencil was my weapon. But I can take that same pencil and jam it into somebody's eyeball, and it's a weapon. Which weapon do you want? Do you want the one that gets you upset and uncomfortable and makes you think and question your own belief system? Or the uncomfortable that sends you to the hospital with a brain hemorrhage? Take a look at the words. Take a look at these headlines. Read these articles with a little bit more of a critical eye. And you'll see that these articles are not written to help you in any way. They're written to sell cars, candy bars, and carpets. Let's come to terms with what's really going on here. And if you're buying ammunition for hunting, do you need a full metal jacket or a copper jacket or whatever those things? I don't even know what they're called. I just buy range ammo. It's the cheap shit. It's what I can afford. So if I'm going to send 50 shots down range to hit a target to see if I still have the same eyes I did when I was 14, 15, 16, I don't need full metal. And if I were hunting rabbits, I want enough of the rabbit behind to eat. So if you're carrying around a Browning 50 cal hunting deer, you obviously do not understand P equals F over A. That's the formula for pressure. Force over area. The smaller the area, the greater the pressure. Anyway. All right, all you 8th graders, let's hope you crack a book today. And we'll see you tomorrow right here on the Asylum, your refuge in a world gone mad. By the way, it's not the Herd Tell Network. I'm an idiot. It's the Big Talker Network, of which Herd Tell is a big, big, big part of it. And I can't thank Andrew enough for being there. Especially on days when this little hippie is mad and is about to lash out at just about everything because everybody is just too damn stupid to be talking about the same thing. People are mad about the apples, but they're yelling at the oranges. A gun is not a firearm. A gun is not a weapon. A weapon is a weapon. Anything is a weapon when used in that manner. So yes, a gun can be a weapon. But in and of itself, it is a tool. And to claim anything else is ignorant and is trying to play on your physical, mental, emotional, or psychological being. It's warfare. And to combat that warfare, all we can use is logic and education. So let's start with the definition of the words. What is a mass shooting? What is a gun? What is a weapon? What is a firearm? And then from there, let's take a closer look at these numbers. We sensationalize the hell out of these mass shootings. Maybe rightfully so. But I don't think so. Because again, this is why I left the news department in the first place. We were capitalizing on the misfortunes of people to sell cars, carpets, and candy bars. That's who we are as human beings. We don't give a damn about the kids that were shot. What we care about is that every news outlet in the country gets to the news first. Whether it's right or not is irrelevant. We'll correct it later, just be first so that people will click. Second in the world overall in gun deaths, firearm deaths. But we don't even make the list in the rate of violent gun homicides, firearm homicides. We're second in the world for firearm-related suicide, but we're not even in the top 10 for violent homicides by firearm. You see what I'm saying? Do you see the difference? This one mass shooting is not an isolated event. There were several, 12 mass shootings. What was that headline again? 12 mass shootings just in the 3-day weekend. And it's still going to be so little by the numbers that it's not even going to make the top 10 for violent firearm homicides in the world. So let's start our conversation with some actual fact, data. Stop with the emotional, stop with the mental, stop with the psychological warfare, and start having adult conversations about that which makes us uncomfortable. What about America sucks so bad that we are number 2 in the world for firearm-related suicide? What is that? What is causing that? Because I guarantee you, these school shootings, these mass shootings are going to be related to the same underlying cause that puts us at number 2 in the world for suicide by gun. This old hippie needs a nap. And while we're at it, get the hell off my lawn.
Keeping Leland informed. The Big Talker